Hi, everyone. I'm really excited to be welcoming my esteemed and beautiful author, Cate Montana of the EWord. She is going to give us some tips today on how to deal with our ego. Not that any of us have an ego problem, or not that any of us don't know how to deal with our ego. Oftentimes, it's really a matter of not knowing when the ego is at play and when the ego is not at play, is what I found. So I got so much out of this book, Cate, and I'm really excited to be your publisher and really honored. So do you want to tell us a little bit about the EWord?
Yes. The EWord, I had been sitting on this book for about 7 years. I never wanted to talk about any of the EWords: ego, enlightenment, evolution. I thought that there was certainly way enough bandwidth out in the spiritual community about all of those topics, and who was I to add to the mix? And then I realized that that was probably one of the most egoic positions I could have possibly taken, on the flip side of modest, of being so modest that it was like an ego position that I was taking.
Well, wait. Can I interrupt you really quick?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So I just want to dig right into the nitty gritty, because that is what you just said is something I don't think anybody realizes, or I'm sure people realize it, but I didn't. Being smaller than my normal big self, hiding from things and saying, "Oh, no one needs another voice," or "No one needs another this," that is also the ego.
Absolutely.
So tell
Absolutely.
us what that is.
Well, it's interesting, Zhena. There's so much about, killing the ego, wrestling with the ego, getting rid of the ego, not liking the ego bad and wrong. And what I discovered and what I talk about in the book is the fact that the ego is an inescapable, excellent tool to enable human beings to function on this planet. Without the sense of a separate self, I wouldn't be able to distinguish me from you or from the bus coming down the street at 45 miles an hour. It's great to say that all of this world is really it's not really physical, it's quantum energy and information fields, which is absolutely true. That there are no boundaries and no individuality, and all of this is a dream, which is, yes, absolutely true, but we are in the dream, and as individuals, this amazing miracle of multiplicity in oneness, how that comes about? Well, it comes about through the expression of our individuality via the ego, the personality that arises naturally from our senses, that from, almost conception onward, give us a me and a you, and an outside and an inside, and an up and a down, and a left and a right.
What does that? Okay, so you got me and you lost me, and you got me and you lost me.
Okay.
And I've been studying this stuff for a long time, and I think what I'm curious about is that the ego helps us distinguish ourselves from I'm Zhena, you're Cate.
Yes.
I'm your publisher, you're my author. Together, we are one and not one. But what is the point of that?
The point of that is so that we can have this amazing conversation and experience this creation called physical life. And so the problem arises is when we don't know what the ego actually is. Yeah. When we start to identify with Zhena and Cate, and I think that I'm a white female, heterosexual, a writer, and that's all I am. When I start to, when I think I am my political stance, when I think that I'm my educational level, when I think I am my opinions, boy, then I'm in deep doo-doo.
Why?
And so interesting. People have asked me, well, how do I know when I'm in my ego? And I'm like, well, you're always in your ego. It depends on how aware are you, how aware am I of who I think I am, Cate Montana, human being, versus I am, which is this voiceless, silent, omniscient awareness. It's what Eckhart Tolle calls the watcher, the
Mm-hmm.
observer,
Mm-hmm.
the awakened one, the I call it the I am within.
Mm-hmm.
And that has no name, and it doesn't even really have a face. The face of I am is your face and my face and
Yes.
everything in existence.
Agreed.
So
why does and real quick, so why would it be egoic to say, I don't want to write a book because everybody else is already talking about it?
Because that's a position that my personality, Cate Montana, had about, I just don't want to be like everybody else, or I don't think that I'm important. But who is the I that I'm referring to? I don't think I'm important. I don't think Cate Montana is important. And I suppose in the scheme of things, I don't even actually want to go there. Everybody is important. It's a beautiful thing being an individual showing up on this planet. And I realized, though, that the message that has been pressed to me hugely and through me hugely is just, it had to come out. And by my taking a Cate Montana position of, I don't want to do that, I was really solidly in my precious ego, in a kind of a false, humble, spiritual way, whatever I thought that might be. Mm-hmm. But there's all those trigger words in there. I thought that might be. It's my opinions. It's my programming showing up.
Got it. So the ego, the ego is our individual self.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And the ego, I find that my ego is only calmed down by doing some of the meditations that I've been doing. I do Vipassana and TM, and it's the only time I'm able to become my I am. And I found that in your book, the exercises of I am were really powerful, and the meditations were really beautiful. And I found this to be a very modern take. So I'm a big Neville Goddard fan, and I listen to a lot of Neville, and because I was raised Christian, so the idea that, all the spirituality, like, but is that in the Bible sort of thing, I still have that part of my ego, and sure. I love to kind of pull out, and he talks a lot about I am. And yet his rhetoric can be very old-fashioned. I found the EWord to be really kind of a modern, fast summary of all the greats working, and then quick and to the point and fast-paced and funny coming through Cate Montana. So you're right in the sense that there's nothing new under the sun. We've been, everyone's, well, not everyone, but a lot of these authors have talked about it, but no one's quite said it like you. And that's what I like about your ego of Cate Montana. I like your voice. I like your personality. I think you're funny. I laughed, and this book pissed me off, I have to say. I felt myself, I'm getting chills. I felt myself going, I don't even want to look at it again. And then the next thing I know, I'm like...
That's great. You really just hit the nail on the head, Zhena, because that's the beauty of the ego. When you are so preciously yourself, genuinely just letting it rip with whatever is really pouring through you, it resonates to every other person on the planet, because underneath we are all one. We are all the same. We're dealing with all the same issues in our own unique and precious way. And you're right. To hide my light, my individual light, under a bushel was doing not only myself a disservice, but I am a disservice. So that's the beauty of the ego when it's just allowed to be this beautiful, pristine hue and color of I am, this precious, unique facet called Cate Montana or Zhena Muzyka. It's like, wow.
Yeah, I love it. It's a celebration of expression, really.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And that I think is where your book really does help, where you explain how we come into our programming so well, and how it starts when we're little, and how everything's based on survival. And so the ego gets formed, and then you very quickly teach people how to kind of like hack and slash it to where it's like down to its core, the ego's purpose is as a unique point of reference of the all that is
Absolutely.
creation. And that's not something to shy away from, but to actually experience fully.
Exactly. And the reason I think the book is so important is because it gives people the opportunity to enlarge their egos, not inflate.
Yeah.
Not self-important, diluted self-inflation, but to expand the perspective of the unique individual.
I love that. To enlarge, not inflate. See these discernments and clarifications that you just, I mean, it's like you've got the sword and you just cut through so much. And it really, that's what I love about this. Like, I mean, when I was reading it, I remember the first time I got the proposal from Lisa, your agent, and I was on the treadmill at the gym. And at the gym, you know, we have these TVs that are on the treadmills, and I don't have cable. I haven't had it since I was little, so I was like, I go there to kind of like get my HGTV like fix. And it was on the news, and I was reading your proposal, and I was seeing like these like ego guys on the news, and I was like reading the proposal, and I was going, this is so needed. I just was like, this is like divine, like this is like manna from heaven, this book. So real quick for our viewers and our members of Enliven Book Club, tell us why you wrote the EWord. I know your ego wanted you to stay small, and then you decided to enlarge it, not inflate it, but tell us a little bit about Rhiannon.
I wrote the book, number one, because I couldn't not write it anymore. Spirit within, I am just insisted. So I had no choice. That's number one. And I had a dear friend, and I say had because she passed away in 2013 of brain and bone cancer. And I realized that so much of her difficulty in life, and if we do adhere to the whole mind-body connection premise, that she was wildly lost in her mind and in her opinions and in her human programming, her ego, and to the point of almost insanity and at some points. And I never could help her because she just saw me as one more ego coming, you know, yapping about my truth. And she was absolutely right. There wasn't anything that I could do for her because I really didn't have a clear enough perspective on what the ego is, what it isn't, how it's born, and how to expand it, and how to tone down those rabid voices, all those opinions and positions in the brain that we confuse with self. And I wish to heaven that I had known back when she was still alive what I've figured out now, finally, and been shown. But I do now, and knowing Rhiannon and seeing so many people in pain and so much confusion, and people in the spiritual community who have been on the path for decades, still wrestling with the same issues, still suffering. And you know, Buddha was so right. Suffering comes from not knowing who the self is. And so I realized that it was absolutely critical in this day and age that we get a handle on the question, who am I? Get clear about the role of the ego. Stop demonizing it and stop parading it around like, you know, I'm it. It's to expand it and get that larger view of we are all one. Understand the physics of it, understand how the ego arises, and then go, oh, that's not all I am. I mean, God, can you imagine a world filled with people who understood that their ego was a tool?
Yeah.
And that it wasn't who they really are, and that understood and that their sense of self started to become enlarged to embrace the understanding that we are actually genuinely all one, just like all the great mystics have said, and now quantum physics is proving.
Yes, absolutely.
So it would change everything. So that's why I wrote the book, Zhena. I could not write the book.
Well, I'm so glad you wrote the book. And for our members and our viewers, the book is the EWord, Ego, Enlightenment, and Other Essentials. Cate Montana is the author who is now being dragged into teaching which she didn't want to do either. She didn't want to write the book, and now she's being asked to teach. And so tell us, you've been speaking a lot at Unity churches, and what has been the response of people around this content?
It's been really exciting because people are really enthused about it. They're really getting it. It's so clear in my mind that it becomes clear in their minds, and then they get excited. And everywhere I've spoken, we're all wrestling with clarity on what is actually essentially the most simple freaking thing in the world. And yet, and I know that simple sometimes is incredibly distant from us.
Yeah.
As he goes, our perspective just loves complicated. So it's been really beautiful response from people. I've been speaking at Unity churches, spirituality centers, centers for spiritual living, and it's been great. And people have been asking me to teach what I know. So I've had to get off my position about doing workshops and seminars. So, yeah.
Isn't it interesting how, resistant we can be to understanding our egos? It's like my ego was like, stop reading! Stop! I don't want to die! And then I'm like, you're not going to die! You're going to get, your training wheels taken off your bike so you can go have more fun, Mr. Ego. And it's like, but the inner conversations, right? I think for so many people, and for our viewers, my biggest takeaway with the EWord, and maybe you can share a couple of yours, is really I was really kind to everybody. I was a fair trade activist. I was always doing things for other people, and I was beating the hell out of myself inside. My inner conversation was so mean. You're fat. You're ugly. You're no good. Who are you to, be a publisher, or why are you writing? This has already been said, like you experienced. Like this inner conversation was just, on the verge of abuse, really. And I really started, the book really taught me to really start to separate my one nature, my I am, and really observe that. And say, listen, friend, I'm going to hug you. I'm going to embrace you. I'm going to make you one with me. And I'm going to love me. And I really have a new appreciation for who I am. Because I know I am not Zhena. I know I'm one with all. And if I'm going to be kind to my kids or my lover or my friends or my authors or my readers, I have to be kind to me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. God, you hit on so many important topics there. I think one of the things that really blew me out of the water was realizing that as a spiritual person that I actually had a double whammy as far as my ego is concerned, that I had a regular ego and then I had a spiritual ego. I had all these opinions about who I was as a human being, and then I overlaid that with all of the rules and regulations of being a spiritual person. I had to be kind to everybody. I was never supposed to get flustered. I wasn't supposed to be too emotional. I was supposed to meditate every day.
I was supposed to wear white on Thursdays. I loved that part of the book.
Really? Oh my God. So much, so many hoops to jump through. And it's just like, where is joy in that?
Yeah.
And when I realized that all of that was simply more programming under the S label of spirituality, and that it wasn't the truth at all. It was just more stories in my head about how this outrageous, wild I am presence is supposed to behave. And I went, oh shoot. So taking the yoke off of all these expectations and stories and ideas, it's just a bunch of words in our head. And then we live out those words and those stories, and we become absolutely straitjacketed. Yeah. And yet I am has no judgment. Yeah. It has no laws. It has no system. It has no rules. It's just hell-bent for election. Everything goes because I'm life. Wow. Yeah. And to straitjacket that is just so sad. So, it's well-meaning to say, well, I have to be a spiritual person, and we say, well, all things are spiritual, but it's so interesting. Just saying that means that I really don't know that I am already. All of this.
Agreed. Agreed. I love it, Kate. I love it. I've loved editing your book with you. I loved having our egos clash here and again. Um, and
Inevitable.
and I loved you through all of it. And I really did have a transformation by working with you on this book. And I'm very grateful. And so for our members and our viewers, this is called The E-Word by Cate Montana. And Kate is one with all of us, but the personality she is in this incarnation is Cate Montana, and we're really glad she exists to make us laugh and cry a little and dig our heels in a little and really ultimately see that I am is an expression of all, and we get to do that. What a gift. Thank you, Kate.
You're so welcome. What pleasure is mine. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And for our viewers, you can find more about Cate Montana at catemontana.com, as well as enlivenbookclub.com, where we are going to be having some really fun conversations with Kate around her book launch. And we would love for you to pre-order the book, The E-Word. We would super appreciate it. Our egos and our oneness with you would love it. And we are grateful you joined us today, and we love you. Mwah.